Good evening, everyone. In 1953, my very good friend Charles Braceland Flood made his debut upon the national literary stage with his New York Times bestseller, Love is a Bridge. Then a law student at Harvard, having graduated in 1951 from Harvard College, where he was mentored by Archibald MacLeish, Charlie left the law forever, setting his sights on the more elusive pursuit of a full-time author. Winner of the Houghton Mifflin Literary Fellowship Award, Charlie's novel was described by one critic as a first novel of exceptional merit. Another critic wrote, "When it is considered that Love is a Bridge is a first novel by a writer now in his 23rd year, it is a performance to hearten anyone who looks to the future of the novel in the United States." Nearly 50 years later, Charlie inscribed one of my copies of Love is a Bridge, urging me to keep the yellowed reviews contained in the front flap as a reminder that the race is to the swift, but also to the patient. In his nearly 60 years as an author of fiction, history, and biography, Charlie has followed his own true compass, abandoning the novel when his muse no longer spoke to him of fiction, embracing instead the satisfaction found in historical research, and embracing the world of nonfiction with the same compelling narrative skills and sharp eye for character and setting that made his novels bestsellers. Charlie's autobiographical tales, that he has yet to put to paper, are as fascinating as the insight he has given to the lives of Robert E. Lee, Adolf Hitler, William Tecumseh Sherman, and Ulysses S. Grant. How many living souls, outside of Woody Allen's fictional protagonist, played by Owen Wilson in Midnight in Paris, can casually recount having shared a cocktail hour with Ernest Hemingway in the Ritz Bar in Paris, or a steam bath with Arthur Miller in New York? Three great men of the mid-20th century captured Charlie's fancy, and he set out to meet them: Churchill, Hemingway, and the Pope. He batted 2 for 3, somehow missing Churchill, to Sir Winston's unfortunate loss. Charlie is a past president of the PEN American Center, an organization founded in 1922 to advance literature, defend free expression, and foster literary fellowship, whose membership has included the literary stars of the 20th century. He covered Olympics in Melbourne, Rome, Tokyo, and Mexico City for the Associated Press. He was a senior Fulbright scholar in Taiwan, and his fascinating book on the disastrous losses of the American Revolution, that ultimately led to our victory, Rise and Fight Again, won an American Revolution Roundtable Award for the best work of its genre during the 1976 bicentennial. Now, no faithful biographer would omit the bumps in the road that add to the drama, an emotional roller coaster of a real life. The year 1970 saw the publication of The War of the Innocents, Charlie's very personal account of his life and times as an attached member of an army company in the jungles of Vietnam and Cambodia. His narrative took no sides in the political controversy surrounding the Vietnam War. And though Charlie's book remains one of the truest, unadorned, and honest accounts of that war, his sales suffered for his lack of explicit anti-war sentiment. During the years between the publication of his biographies on Hitler's early rise to power and the deep and enduring friendship between Grant and Sherman that won the Civil War, Charlie wrote one of the most compelling historical novels I've ever read. The lead subject was Matilda of Tuscany, an 11th century duchess whose life as a ruler and warrior was as remarkable as any king or prince immortalized in print. Unfortunately, it was published in Germany, not the United States, so you'll have to take my word for it. In 2009, Charlie's 1864 Lincoln at the Gates of History earned rave reviews, including a glowing 3/4-page review in the New York Times, only to be undersold by the publisher in the wake of the economic recession. Throughout these many achievements and occasional setbacks, Charlie's most stunning success and greatest strength has been his wife Kathy and his 3 fantastic children, and more recently grandchildren. When Kathy transplanted Charlie from his native New York City to the Bluegrass, he quickly adopted the state of Kentucky with open arms. He has performed most of his research at Eastern Kentucky University, been faithful to our love of thoroughbred racing. Each spring and fall he can be found handicapping with mediocre success at Keeneland's Clubhouse, and fought the good fight against the Army's effort to make central Kentucky a dumping ground for nuclear waste. To his friends in Madison County, who know him as Braceland, he is the citizen patriot, always ready for the most trying of tasks, shunning the limelight, speaking out when necessary, but never to hear himself pontificate. Charlie has an endearing humanity and humility which adds tremendously to his stature as a person, but may have served him less well in the literary world of insatiable egos. Above all, Charlie has been his own man, as a scholar, author, husband, father, and friend. And in being true to himself and his ideals, he has never been driven by a publisher's unreasonable demands or another's perception of what he should be writing or how he should be writing it. In pursuing his own creative inspiration, Charles Braceland Flood has earned many times over the accolades he has received from critics, colleagues, and an adoring public. I proudly present to you my friend, Charles Braceland Flood.
Well, it gives me a much better opinion of myself than I had 5 minutes ago. I really wish that this had been in reverse, because I would like to introduce Jerry Toner to you. I will, however, ask you just to go fast forward and reverse with me and tell you a little bit about Jerry. When I moved down here, I had one connection with Kentucky, before I met Kathy, that is, and it was that for 7 years, when I was this enfant terrible in the 1950s, which were my 20s, I was on something called the Board of Overseers Committee to visit the English department at Harvard. And the professors at Harvard were not very pleased about this. It was like the regular army, suddenly, who is this guy from the National Guard coming in to look at us and tell us what we're doing? But there was one guy who was very, very pleasant. He was a man named Barry Bingham Sr. And so whenever I'd meet somebody from Kentucky around the United States, I'd say, well, now, I think it's unlikely that you'd know who this is, but I know one Kentuckian. His name is Barry Bingham Sr. And what do you know? They always knew who Barry Bingham Sr. was. And it was not till I got down here that I understood why they knew Barry Bingham Sr. In any event, after I'd been here a short time, Barry, who was very nice to Kathy and me, Barry and his wife, Mary, he asked me to come over here for 2 or 3 days and serve on what he was duplicating of this committee we'd both been on at Harvard to visit the English department at the University of Louisville. So I did this and found it very interesting. And as these couple of days went by, I became aware of this young man, a very young man then, who was sort of always around and going to the right class and asking the right questions. And that turned out to be Jerry Toner, a very young and able lawyer here in Louisville, and we became friends. And when I say friends, I mean that we have been very close over the years. He and his wife Carol have visited Kathy and me up in Maine, and we have had a lot of fun together. Of the many times that we've been to their very nice house and for terrific meals, one evening stands out in my mind. It's a few years ago, and Jerry alludes to the fact that this New Yorker does like to go to Keeneland. It was one of the great bonuses I found in coming down here unexpectedly. And so we're well aware of the fact that every spring over here in Louisville, despite what we think of Keeneland, you do have an event called the Kentucky Derby. And so they were good enough to have us over. And Jerry had scoped this out. He had terrific seats about 200 yards from the finish, and perhaps up a few of these metal seats, few rows. The problem was that there was no overhang, and it happened to be a day that would completely eclipse this rain here today. So Jerry, very wisely, went off to a hardware store and appeared at the track with a huge tarpaulin. And when I say it was huge, there were 12 of us huddled under this thing during the day. So came the Derby itself, and I'm sitting there under this thing. And we're perfectly placed to see the race if you can just keep wiping the rain out of your eyes.